guys, and welcome back to another What's for Dinner Wednesday. Now, so far on this series, I've made a lot of recipes that were Mexican inspired, Asian inspired, healthy options, and not so healthy options. But today I'm going to be making a recipe that is kind of a viewer request, and that is a meat and potatoes dish. I'm going to be making what's hopefully going to be the best meatloaf ever. So stay tuned and I'll show you how to make it.
The family fudge, the family fudge. They are mostly sweet but full of nuts.
The best meatloaf ever. I went to Pinterest and looked up a bunch of different recipes that claim to be the best ever, and I kind of mashed those up into my own version. So I'm gonna go ahead and share that with you today. Before I start mixing up my meatloaf, I'm gonna prepare my sweet potatoes, because on the side of my meatloaf I'm gonna have sweet potatoes and some broccoli. So I've taken a small pan, lined it with foil, because sweet potatoes can be messy. And I have 3 nice sized sweet potatoes here that I've washed really well. Now I'm just gonna poke them with the fork, and these are gonna go in the oven with the meatloaf and cook at the same time. So I'm just gonna go ahead and puncture these all over so they don't explode too much in the oven. Okay, so now those are ready to go in the oven with the meatloaf as soon as that's ready. And then the broccoli, I'm actually not gonna steam that up until about 20 minutes before everything else is done. Okay guys, here's what I'm putting in my meatloaf. First off, I have about 2 pounds of lean ground beef. Also, you could use turkey, that would be totally fine. And then I'm gonna be using about a cup of crushed up crackers. Usually you could use Ritz crackers, but I'm gonna be trying this gluten-free version instead. But honestly, I do think the Ritz crackers are better, but they're not gluten-free. And then I'm gonna be using 1 egg, a cup of milk, ketchup, of course. In my book, you can't have meatloaf without ketchup. And then I'm gonna be having an onion, salt and pepper, brown sugar, garlic powder, Worcestershire sauce, and part of our yummy topping is going to be apricot preserves mixed with some brown sugar and some ketchup. Okay, so I'm gonna get started on my crackers. Now if you're using Ritz crackers, you want about a cup of cracker crumbs, but I'm gonna go ahead and break up this entire package, and I'm just gonna leave them right in the bag. I don't feel any large pieces of cracker anymore, so that's small enough for me. Definitely, you could use a food processor for this, but I think it's just easier and more fun to punch it. So I'm gonna go ahead and add my meat to my bowl now. This is about 2 pounds of lean ground beef. There we go. To that I'm gonna add the 1 cup of crushed up crackers. And then I'm gonna add 1 egg, but I'm going to beat it up first a little bit. I should have picked a bigger bowl. Okay, so just lightly beaten, 1 egg goes in there, and then in goes 1 cup of milk, and then ½ a cup of ketchup. There we go. Next up is my onion. I'm gonna go ahead and chop up about half of 1 medium onion. And if you know me, I'm gonna be using my handy dandy food chopper to make these onions go super fast. Okay, so there's half of our onion finely diced. It's gonna go in there. Next up is the salt and pepper. I'm putting in 1 teaspoon of salt and ½ a teaspoon of pepper. Then comes the garlic powder. I'm going to be using ½ a teaspoon of garlic powder, or a heaping teaspoon if you really like garlic. And then in here I'm going to be putting ½ a tablespoon of Worcestershire sauce. There we go. Next comes the mixing part. I'm going to go ahead and take off all of my jewelry because I just think it's a good idea. I'm going to get in there with my hands and mix it all together. I'm going to try not to over mix it as well. Now to cook my meatloaf, I'm actually going to be using a broiler pan, and underneath I've lined it with aluminum foil, which is going to make cleanup a lot easier. And I like to use the broiler pan because any of the grease can just drop down and my meatloaf isn't sitting in the grease. So I'm just going to dump this onto my pan and form it into a loaf. Now this is kind of a big meatloaf for just my family because I have little kids, but I wanted to make it tonight because I'm having my parents over for dinner. It's my mom's birthday and I just wanted to do something nice for her, and so I'm making dinner. Now when I was growing up, I had two very sweet grandmothers, and one of my grandmothers, who was my mom's mom, her name was Arlita, and she made the best meatloaf. In fact, I loved her meatloaf so much that I requested it for my birthday dinner when I was 6 years old, because it was that good. So I don't know if this is going to be just as good as hers, but hopefully. Unfortunately, I never learned the recipe from her, and now it's too late. Now I don't know if this is going to be the best meatloaf ever, but it's looking pretty good so far. Alright, I'm going to wash my hands again, and then I'm going to make the topping for our meatloaf. This recipe is a little bit unique because it uses apricot preserves as sort of a sweet, almost a barbecue type flavor on top. I'm going to add 3/4 of a cup of ketchup, which seems like a lot of ketchup, but this is going to make a lot of yummy sauce. Go, dump that in there. Okay, then to this I'm going to be adding 1/4 cup of brown sugar, and then I'm going to be needing 1/4 cup of apricot preserves. So I'm just going to kind of eyeball that. That looks like 1/4 of a cup. Next comes 1/2 tablespoon of Worcestershire sauce. Does anybody else have trouble pronouncing Worcestershire sauce? I know I do. Now we're going to mix up our sauce. You get all the lumps out of there. It smells like apricot barbecue sauce. It smells really good. We're actually only going to use 1/2 of it right now, and we're going to save 1/2 of it for a sauce later. So there's a special way you want to put it on here to make sure you're not cross-contaminating your sauce. So I'm going to go ahead and take about 1/2 of it right now and just drizzle it down on the top. Like that. And then I'm going to reserve this for later. I'm not going to dip back in here once I've spread it out, because that would be gross. I'm going to try to keep most of it on the top so that it doesn't just drip right off. Now my apricot preserves actually have large pieces of apricots in it. So if you're seeing some chunks, that's what that is. It's big pieces of apricot. Now I know my favorite part of the meatloaf is always the end piece. Can I get a thumbs up for those of you who prefer the end piece? All right, that is looking like a beautiful meatloaf. So now I'm going to go ahead and stick my sweet potatoes in the oven on the lower rack and the meatloaf on the middle rack. Okay, and you guys probably already know this, but I don't know if I mentioned, I have my oven at 350. It was preheating the whole time I was mixing this up. Now that meatloaf is going to take about 1.5 hours in the oven. The sweet potatoes, I'll go ahead and check those after 1 hour, and if they're tender, I will pull them out. And while that's cooking, I better clean my house because, like I said, my mom's coming over for dinner tonight. Here's the meatloaf. Now I can tell that it separated a little bit. You can see that hole right there. So it's not completely a loaf, but I think it's gonna taste just fine. So I'm gonna go ahead and build our plate. My parents just got here, so it's perfect timing. Let's cut a little end piece like that. And we are going to serve this with some broccoli. Here are the sweet potatoes that we cooked along with the meatloaf. And to this I just added salt and pepper and a little bit of butter. There we go. And then in this corner we'll put some cottage cheese and some of the reserved sauce that we made can go right on top. All right, I'm ready to give this a try. Here it is. Ooh, it's still steaming hot. It's very good. It has a lot of sweetness to it because of the apricot jam, but it is very good. Well, let's find out if everybody else likes it. Happy birthday, Mom!
Happy birthday!
Thank you.
Yeah, there's our meatloaf. Yum, we're gonna dig in. All right, guys, thanks for joining me today. Let me know in the comments down below how you like to make your meatloaf. I know there are so many different versions and I'd love to try them all. Thanks for watching and I'll see you next time.